Hello and welcome. Today's lessons, we're going to learn how to factor polynomials. We're going to start with these problems right here, which are binomials. So in this situation, you'd ask yourself, what is the biggest number that divides 16 and 24? If you cannot think of that number, you can ask your calculator to help you by opening a calculator, clicking on the keyboard, clicking on functions, and then clicking on miscellaneous. And under miscellaneous, you're going to find the function GCD, which stands for greatest common denominator. And then you're going to write the numbers 16 and 24. Do not worry about the negative. So here, I'm just going to write 16, comma, 24. And as you can see, the calculator tells me that the biggest number that divides 16 and 24 is the number 8. So that means I will be able to factor an 8 from 16 and 24. Also, I noticed that both terms have the letter x. So that means I can factor an x, because the first term has two x's and the second term has one x. So that means I'll be able to collect one x from each term. Now that I decided what I'm going to factor, I'm going to open a parenthesis and I'm going to proceed by dividing each term by this number that is outside. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. And x squared divided by x is x. Please notice when you divide x squared and x, there's an invisible 1 right here. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Because when you divide, you subtract the exponents. So 2 minus 1 is 1. But again, you don't have to write the 1. I just wrote it to illustrate that there's an invisible 1 right there. Okay? So let me repeat. I did 16 divided by 8, got 2. X squared divided by x, I got x. Negative 24 divided by 8 is negative 3. And x divided by x, the x cancels, because 1 minus 1 is 0. So there you go. We got our answer. Please notice that also you can confirm if you got the right answer by multiplying it back. When you multiply it back, you should get the same original problem. So 8x times 2x gives you 16x squared. 8x times negative 3 gives you negative 24x. Let's try letter B. Again, I'm looking for the biggest number that goes in 42 and 28. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to change these numbers to 42, comma, 28. And the calculator gives me that the biggest number that divides 42 and 28 is 14. Now, in this particular problem, only the first term has x, the second term does not have x. So that means I won't be able to collect or factor an x. So that means the only thing I'll be able to factor is 14. So let's go ahead and open parentheses and do the division. 42x divided by 14 is 3. X. And negative 28 divided by 14 is negative 2. And there we go. Next problem. Next problem I have 7 and 12. So let's go ahead and write 7 and 12 right here. 7, comma, 12. And we learn that the biggest number that goes into 7 and 12 is 1. I do notice that both of them have x, so I'll be able to factor out an x. And let's go ahead and open parentheses. So 7 divided by 1 is 7. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 12 divided by 1 is negative 12. And x divided by x, the x cancel. So then I'm left with this. This is my factorization. Let's try the next problem. The next problem, we notice that the first term is a negative. Whenever that occurs, I want you to put a negative right here, because usually what that does is that makes sure that the first number right here inside the parentheses is going to be a positive number. Okay, so anytime you see a negative in the front, you need to put a negative right there. Okay, so now let's go over here and write the two numbers. So 15, comma, 14, and we got a 1. So that means the biggest number that goes into 15 and 14 is a 1. And we cannot factor out an m because the m only occurs on the first term but not on the second. So now let's do the division. Negative 15m divided by negative 1 gives us positive 15m. And 14 divided by negative 1 is negative 14. And there we go. And please notice, by having the negative outside, the first term over here became positive. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, so this is our factorization for this problem. Okay, next problem is 81 and 54. So let's go over here. We click right there. We enter 81, comma, 54. Calculator gives us 27. That's the biggest number that goes into those two terms. Also, we notice that we have y's on both terms, so we can factor out a y. And now we can open parentheses. If you need to use a calculator to do the division, go ahead and use that. 81 divided by 27 is 3. And then y squared divided by y is y. 54 divided by 27 is positive 2. And y divided by y, the y cancels. And there we go. That's our answer for this particular problem. Next problem, I noticed that I start with a negative, so I'm going to put a negative outside. And I'm going to look for the biggest number that goes in 64 and 72. So 64, comma, 72, that gives me positive 8. In this particular problem, I cannot factor out the x, so that means I just open parentheses and I perform the division. Negative 64 divided by negative 8 is positive 8x. And negative 72 divided by negative 8 is positive 9. And there we go. Very good. Now, on the next set of examples, if you notice, now I have 4 terms. And we're going to do something called factor by grouping. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. And we're going to do similar what we did before. We're going to ask ourselves, what is the biggest number that goes 8 and 12? If you need the system of the calculator, please remember that you just punch it in 8, comma, 12, and the calculator tells you that the biggest number that goes into those two is number 4. So that means I'll be able to factor out a 4. I can also factor out an x because both of them have x. And then once I do that, I open parentheses. So 8 divided by 4 is 2x, because x squared divided by x is x. And negative 12x divided by 4 is negative 3. Very good. Now here I started with a negative, so I put a negative outside. And what is the biggest number? Divides 10 and 15. That number is number 5. And I cannot factor out an x. So now I'm going to do negative 10x divided by negative 5 is 2x. 15 divided by negative 5 is negative 3. All right. Now, if you notice right now, before I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, now I have, this whole thing right here is one term, and this here is the other term. So first term, second term. Okay. Now, look at those 2 terms. What do they have in common? Well, they have in common 2x minus 3. If you notice, they have 2x minus 3 on both. So what you're going to do is you're going to factor out the 2x minus 3. Okay, so you write 2x minus 3. And then, if you remove the 2x minus 3, what are you left with? 4x minus 5. And there you go. So that will be the factorization. I'm going to do this just to demonstrate, so please don't write this down. But if I was to multiply this back, I will get the original problem. So let me just demonstrate. I'm going to erase this in a few minutes, okay? Just watch, don't write this down. So 2x times 4x is 8x squared. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12x. And negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. And if you notice, this is basically the original problem. The only difference is that negative 10 is coming before negative 12. But basically, it's the same expression. Okay? All right, so let me erase that. So now we're going to do the next problem. So let's try to do the same. We're going to group them in pairs. Once you group in pairs, you do the same process that we did above. What is the biggest number? It goes into 28 and 14. If you cannot figure it out, just look at your calculator and punch it in the numbers. 28, comma, 14. That tells me that the biggest number that goes into the first two terms is 14. And because both terms have y, I'm going to factor out a y. Now open parentheses. 28 divided by 14 is 2. Y squared divided by y is y. Negative 14 divided by 14 is negative 1. And y divided by y, the y cancels. Now I have a negative, so put a negative right there. If this was a positive, then you would put a positive. Okay, but if it's a negative, put a negative. And what is the biggest number that goes in 16 and 8? It would be 8. So negative 16y divided by negative 8 is 2y. And positive 8 divided by negative 8 is negative 1. If you did this correctly, inside the parentheses, you should say the same expression. So I see 2y minus 1, 2y minus 1. So remember, this is your first term. This is your second term. Okay, open two sets of parentheses. And whatever they have in common, put in the first parenthesis. And whatever is left, if you want, you can cross it out. See, 14y. And here would be negative 8. And there we go. Let's try it again with these problems right here. So first, I'm going to group them in pairs. I ask myself, what is the biggest number that divides 2 and 6? The biggest number is 2. Can I factor out an m? Yes, I can. Now that you know what to factor, open parentheses. 2m squared divided by 2m is 1m. Negative 6m divided by 2m is negative 3. If this is a negative, put a negative. If it's a positive, put a positive. In this case, it's a negative, put a negative. And what is the biggest number goes into 721? Is 7. And then I cannot factor a m, so open parentheses. Negative 7m divided by negative 7 is 1m. And 21 divided by negative 7 is negative 3. So there you go. Now you have the first term and the second term. Oh, now you open two sets of parentheses. On the first set, you write what do they have in common. They have in common 1m minus 3. And if I remove the 1m minus 3, the first term is 2m. And the second one is negative 7. And there we go. Please notice, if you don't want to write that 1 in front of the m, that's okay. You could write your answer as m minus 3, open parentheses, 2m minus 7, okay? So you can write like this as well. Okay, but if you write the 1, that's okay. Okay, that is also correct. All right, let's try the last and final example. So first thing I'm going to do is group the first two terms and the last two terms. Okay, what is the biggest number? Goes to 15 and 3. Biggest number is 3. Can I factor out a y? Yes, I can. So now 15 divided by 3 is 5. Y squared divided by y is y. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Whatever sign you see over here, put it right here. So in this case, I see a negative, so I put a negative. And what is the biggest number that goes into 20 and 4 is 4. And then 20y divided by negative 4 is 5y. And 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. You were expecting to see the same expression inside the parentheses, and that's exactly what I see. And I know that then that I'm on the right track. So I have the first term and the second term. I open two sets of parentheses. What they have in common goes on the first, 5y minus 1. And if I remove those, then I have 3y minus 4. So there you go. So today we learned how to factor these binomials right here at the beginning. And then I showed you how to factor by grouping when you have 4 terms like these. This is in preparation for what's coming next, which is factoring trinomials. So right now you'll be able to practice these skills in your homework. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.